Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to the month of February. I don't know how your January went, but mine was very crazy. It was very wild. Long story short, I got my two of my wisdom teeth taken out. Those were planned, but still a bit much. And the next week, I got norovirus and then got really bad appendicitis from it, and then ended up having to get my appendix taken out. And then the week after that, classes started. So it's been busy and it's been a lot, but I made it through. And I can say honestly that the recovery from appendicitis is a lot better than the appendicitis itself. The recovery is like nothing compared to it. So a few cool little scars. They used the robot, which was kind of cool. And yeah, I've just been in classes since then, recovering. I'm finally back to work with no restrictions at my little vet job, and I had my first quiz today on my ASL class. So far so good. So I hope everyone else's January is going a little bit better. And February, well, we can get right into it actually, because my first kind of major theme that I wanted to talk about for February is all of the chaos from January is starting to stabilize and we can begin to move forward with our plans. Both Mars and Jupiter are going direct this month. I think we still have a planet or two retrograde, but for the most part, this is a very welcome change. Has been retrograding in Cancer and Jupiter in Gemini, both considered kind of a debilitating place for those planets to be. The next theme I wanted to talk about was redemption doesn't always feel good, nor is it always necessary. And so I think redemption is kind of a form of validation, maybe even an accomplishment sometimes, and it's important to discern whether it's necessary and whether it will actually feel good, because I think sometimes we can do some it's like when you get in an argument with someone and you can't afterwards you're like, man, I should have said that, and you have this perfect response, and then you get in another little argument and then you have that perfect little response and you're like, wow, I did it. I redeemed that feeling of embarrassment or being defeated or whatever you felt, but then it doesn't feel good. It was just like a little gotcha, and it didn't really help anything. So it's important to kind of add some nuance to redemption, because sometimes it just validates something that doesn't need validated and can cause a little bit of issues. The next thing is going to be commitments will change and can be experimental. It's time to prioritize. And so I talk about commitments a lot because I follow the asteroid Juno, which is the asteroid of commitment. A lot of people know it as the marriage asteroid, but the commitment asteroid is a lot more descriptive and inclusive, I think. So I think commitments are often seen as this like, I have to honor my commitments. I can't do anything, different. I have to see things through. And it's important to know that this is like the Mercury in me, but it's important to know that commitments can be experimental. They don't have to be set in stone, because sometimes you learn new information that changes what you need to prioritize, and the things you were committed to that maybe seemed more urgent are not actually as urgent as you thought they were. And so it's okay to change them. I actually work with a I have like a case manager because I see several different doctors, and honestly I forget who they are and what I see them for and where their numbers are, and so I have like a case manager to help me just keep all the information organized and in the same place, and we meet about every other week and just talk about goals. It's just like maybe a 15-minute phone call. And yeah, she just asked me, like, I think my goals for January were like showering several times a week and brushing my teeth more and, eating a few solid meals a week, like just basic things that I want to improve and focus on, because January has been very crazy. And so I haven't been able to regulate myself as well as I wanted to. And that's been helpful. But they're also like, I haven't met all of my goals. There are weeks where, like, when I got my appendix taken out and I went to the ER 3 times that week, I didn't brush my teeth at the ER or after surgery. I didn't shower immediately after. I didn't want to. I didn't feel good. That's okay. So our commitments and our goals need to be flexible, and we need to be able to adapt those things to our situation because things come up and things happen that we don't expect and we can't predict and we can't prepare for either. And we just have to kind of roll with the punches. And yeah, on to our next one. You don't have to be good at everything to be good at a few things. Allow others to help you out in the areas you struggle. This kind of speaks for itself, and I have a little bit more to add to it later with one of the transits, or maybe with one of the new of the full moon. I don't remember which part of my notes, but I remember there's another note that's going to expand on that later, so we'll circle back to that. Next, I want to talk about the transits for February. It is going to be, well, I've got a few to go through. And then I want to talk about the aspects, which are going to be relationships between two different planets, and then the full moon in Leo and the new moon in Pisces, happening on, the new moon is on the 27th, and the full moon is on the 12th. So our transits for February are, we're going to start with Venus. Venus entered Pisces January 3rd, and on February 4th, it will leave Pisces and enter the sign of Aries. And so Venus and Pisces is all about luxury, comfort, sometimes even hedonism, how these things, pleasure and selfishness can kind of play into each other. And Venus in Aries is sometimes about giving up some of your comfort for the comfort of others. And so it can be about compromise and, just understanding that everyone has different needs and that, one person can't fulfill all the needs of someone else because we're only one person. And it kind of just plays back into allowing others to help you. That's why it was one of the general themes for this month, is because there's a few of these that really just like scream they're going to be things that you're not good at, and other people are going to be good at them. And so use your strengths and their strengths to reach some kind of understanding and something that's mutually beneficial. And practice healthy selfishness. Take up just enough space to be comfortable. You don't have to rush through your day. You don't have to really beat yourself up to get things done. For example, I almost didn't record this. It's already the 28th. And so I'm only going to have a few days to edit it, but I did want to get it done. And even though I felt like, hey, this is time sensitive, I need to get it done. I don't want to make all the time that I took taking notes wasted. I'm not even going to try it. I'm not going to touch that. I just want to make my time more worthwhile. Anyways, I felt very rushed, and so I played a few games of solitaire before I recorded this. Even though I have a few things to do later in the day, and now I have a little bit less time to record, but I'm more relaxed now than I was, and take up just enough space to be comfortable. Not too much. I didn't overindulge. I stopped, and now I'm getting my little worky done. But do take that time. Take a moment. Next, we're going to talk about Jupiter. It is stationing direct in Gemini on February 4th, the same day that Venus enters Aries. With Jupiter, we're going to move forward with a clear view of the road ahead. I think Jupiter is about expansion and learning and growing, and with it retrograding in Gemini, it's been a little rocky. And so with it moving direct, I'm thinking, okay, now that we've kind of fumbled around the kitchen a little bit, we know where everything is, and maybe we even took time to stop and clean it so that we can move easier in it, just move on to the next room. But there's just a sense of progression with this is kind of the point. Next, I want to talk about Mars retrograding in Cancer. This started on January 7th and is going to continue until the 24th before it goes direct. This is about revealing passion through vulnerability. What do you want to do with your passion now? I think I read such a good little Alice Sparkly Cat. If you don't follow them already, you should. Can't recommend them enough. Their newsletter is always great. Their insights are always great. All their articles are great. They inspired me to write horoscopes in the first place, so I appreciate them a lot. But they wrote something about Mars and Cancer that reminded me of this note that I took. Mars is about aggression and Cancer is about vulnerability. During Mars in Cancer, we learn how to exercise helpful aggression over things that make us feel the most vulnerable. So there's a sense of vulnerability and there's a sense of passion. And it's important to recognize those things. Oh, the whole point of reading that, there was a part about confusing forgiveness with rejection or angrily wanting something from someone and that being our way of still wanting that relationship. And so just getting really clear on what our emotions actually mean, because sometimes we feel something and it doesn't actually mean something other than, our nervous system is activated, or maybe we need to eat and that's making us feel a little grumpy, but there's nothing wrong or something we're upset about. We're just a little hungry. Yeah, just finding out what those emotions mean, because sometimes they don't mean anything, and other times we can kind of create that meaning. And other times we can just recognize that it has some meaning without having to define it, and that being very satisfying in and of itself. We don't have to get too here or there with it. Next, I want to talk about Mercury, and I always want to talk about Mercury, but I want to talk about Mercury in Aquarius and in Pisces, because that's where it's moving from and where it's going to. And so Mercury is in Aquarius from January 27th until February 13th, and then it enters Pisces on the 14th. Isn't that Valentine's Day? How am I a Juno astrologer and I don't know when Valentine's Day is? It is the 14th, so I do know when it is. Okay, yeah. Enters Pisces February 14th and exits on March 2nd. I wrote turning hopes into fantasies because, I don't know, hopes I feel like have to be very grounded, whereas fantasies don't have to be grounded. They can be very out there and expressive and creative and unrealistic. And that can be very empowering. It can be very perspective changing to be able to exercise our brain and our mind in ways that are not logical or have a unique logic to them that we create. So these fantasies have a purpose and they have value to them. I think I have more notes about fantasies later that we're going to expand on. So I'm going to leave it there and we'll circle back to her. But next we have Sun in Aquarius and in Pisces. And so we're in Aquarius season. We're going to be moving into Pisces season on February 18th. And Aquarius season started January 20th. And so it's been a little bit. And it's about emerging from darkness and starting to see the light. And so the difference in the signs of Aquarius and the signs of Pisces is Aquarius is still the winter. And not only is it the winter, but also it is the dead of winter. It is the fixed winter. It is the cold and harsh and just unrelenting and characteristic of wintertime of the season. And Pisces, well, a part of that too is darkness, is the wintertime is the darkest the time of year. In a literal sense, there is less daylight available. And so that is what Aquarius season is all about, is having to navigate in that darkness. Whereas Pisces season is, okay, now the winter's ending. It's not spring yet. Spring is not until Aries season. But Pisces season is the end of winter and when, the seeds of spring are starting to, you know, form, so to speak, but not physically. Yeah, we still have a little bit of time. It's January 28th and there's a lot of snow on the ground, so we're definitely in winter still. But Pisces season is when it starts to change. And it's when you start to see the light, you start to see that, hey, we're not going to be in winter forever. Things are going to be different. And so there's a sense of optimism and a sense of redemption that comes with the sign of Pisces and the time that the sun spends in Pisces. So that begins February 18th and lasts until March 19th. And after that, we'll have Aries season, March 20th. I'm excited for that. All my Aries friends are going to have their birthdays. Yeah, next we're going to move on to Juno, mother of Mars. So Juno enters Sagittarius on February 19th, and it's going to be there till April 13th. So it's going to stay there for a while. And it's going to be exiting the sign of Scorpio before it enters Sagittarius. And that's going to be about exploring new ways to honor our commitments. And so while it's in Scorpio until the 18th, there's going to be just this deep transformation and a deep sense of changing, of, petals falling off and new petals blooming. And Sagittarius is when you can kind of have some fun with it and when you can kind of see what grows out of the surface now that the soil has been nurtured. You can see what changes and what doesn't change and what lasts. And you can just have fun with it. I think experiential and, using experimenting is very Sagittarius, but I think just exploring and having fun is an easier way to say it. But yeah, ways to honor our commitments. That way they don't have to feel or be very monotonous. Next, we have Vesta and Scorpio, and it's going to be here for a while. So I think we talked about this in January because it started January 4th, and it exits on September 15th because it enters a retrograde. It starts retrograding on March 22nd. So deep commitments are still being explored. Our rituals are things that give us value and give us meaning and where our sense of value comes from. Those are still going to be underlying throughout, now until September and have been since January. So just kind of, again, keep an eye on our commitments, our habits. Next, we have Uranus going direct in Taurus. So it's finally stationing direct on January 30th. So technically January, but right at the end of it. So it's basically you're gonna feel this and see this in February. And this is just moving forward with a new form. It's Taurus is an earth sign, and every time I think of Taurus, I just think of the dirt on the ground and soil and gravel and stone and just soil that you would grow something in. It just feels very Taurus. And I think about Uranus and how it's known for disrupting things and changing things. And so, what do you do before you plant your seeds and your crops? You till the soil. You have to disrupt the soil and kind of wake it up and mix it up a little bit. And that gives it a new form. Even though it's the same thing, maybe it has all the same things in it. Maybe something was added. But yeah, just moving forward with a new form, whatever that looks like. It's an outer planet, so it could be more of a generational thing or more of like a bigger picture rather than you making a very personal and individual decision. So that's something we'll just kind of keep an eye on. That's it for my transits. So next we have our aspects. An aspect is a relationship between two different points in a chart, normally two different planets, and it's represented on a chart by a line. And there are different types of aspects, they have different meanings, but that's what we're going to get into. So the first, we're going to start with Venus again. And on February 1st, the first day of the month, it is going to be conjunct Neptune and the North Node in Pisces. Progress that isn't founded in hope and grounded in reality is a fruitless endeavor. This is just something that kind of came to me when I thought about the imagery of Neptune and being kind of, fantasy and dreamy, but also kind of like an illusion sometimes. And the North Node very often being, in my opinion, misconstrued to be something that we're meant to strive towards, whereas I think the description and the meaning of it being something that is a head without a body and something that just no matter how much it eats, it's never satisfied. And that has been my experience with the North Node, where it's a skill you can hone, it's something that you can improve on and continue to feed yourself with. But that doesn't necessarily mean you'll find fulfillment in it or that it will even nourish or connect to your reality. So yeah, just progress that isn't founded in hope and grounded in reality is a fruitless endeavor. So I think hope needs to be grounded. Hope that is not grounded, that's kind of what separates it between a fantasy and reality. And yeah, progress without hope it feels fruitless, even if you get somewhere, literally. It feels like you have to have hope that it's going to get better and that it can get better. So next we have Mercury and Aquarius trine Jupiter retrograding in Gemini on February 3rd. Sometimes the things that hinder us most are not the obstacles themselves, but the ways that we perceive them. I think this is pretty succinct how we talk, so if we talk about something like, oh my gosh, this is such a big deal, like I don't want to go to work tomorrow, I don't want to go to work tomorrow, you know, it can kind of make it more trouble than it actually is. And sometimes we find that we get there and we're like, oh, I actually had a pretty good day. I, chatted with my coworkers or had a really nice customer or whatever. Yeah, our perception can really, shed a light on an obstacle, and depending on how we're looking at it, it can look bigger or smaller. The shadow it casts is what I'm trying to get at somehow. Next, we're going to talk about Venus again. However, it is after Venus enters Aries. It's going to enter Aries and make a sextile to Pluto in Aquarius on February 7th. Don't be so hard on yourself. Taking 5 steps forward and 3 steps back is still forward movement. Yeah, it's really important to have grace with yourself and to have grace with others because it's true. 5 steps forward and 3 steps back is still 2 steps further than you were before you started that journey. Not every, when people say progress isn't linear, what they mean is sometimes you're gonna go backwards. You're gonna do the thing that you really did not want to do, that you really regretted the first time you did it, and the second time you did it, and then the most recent time you did it. And then you're just gonna feel really bad. It just makes you feel bad, and feeling bad is not a good motivator. Someone told me a story one time about a man who is, walking down the street, and then there's a man hole. What are those called? Like a sewer. There's a hole in the ground, and doesn't see it, falls in it, tries again the next day. So the next day takes the same path. He remembers like, oh, there was a hole in the ground yesterday, and then he steps in it and falls in it again. And he's like, oh, maybe the next day. So the next day comes, he thinks, oh, there's a hole in the ground and I need to move past it and step around it. And then he steps in it again. And then the third, and it keeps going and it keeps going. And every day he just gets a little bit and a little bit closer until eventually it's there. I know it's there. I know I need to move around it. And I know ahead of time, I've decided before I even went left. Now I can do it. I fall in the hole. Now if I don't want to do it again, I just want to go to where I'm going. And he does it. He walks around it, but it takes like 7 or 8 times before he can do this very seemingly simple task of stepping around it. But how many times do, we see something little that we need to pick up, a little piece of trash or something, and we leave it in our car and we forget about it. And then we forget about it. And then we forget about it. It can be very easy to beat yourself up about that kind of thing. And so, especially with Mars and Cancer and with Venus and Aries, and even with Jupiter and Gemini, like just give yourself some grace. This is a time to like make some mistakes and to learn from them and to be okay with things with hindrances. Which kind of brings me to my next thing. Mars retrograding in Cancer, trine Saturn and Pisces on February 9th. So just 2 days later, you might expect some hindrances. Try to see what you try to see what you can get done while staying firmly planted. And so if there is an obstacle in front of you and you're not sure how to move around it, don't just stay where you are and see what you can do with what you have within reach. Just try to see what you can get done while you're firmly planted. That is one of the best ways to feel like you're moving forward when you're feeling stuck. And also, even though I say you might expect some hindrances, that's just because Mars and Saturn both represent, they're like the planet of hindrances. That's why they have a bad reputation. That's why they have the reputation they do have. And so, is it guaranteed? Maybe, maybe not. Um, if it is, blame them. If not, thank them. Next, we have Mercury in Pisces square Jupiter in Gemini on February 20th. We are only disadvantaged by our weaknesses when we aren't connected to the social support that enables us to do the thing, to do more than we can alone. No one person can be good or bad at everything. So, kind of building on this idea of not beating yourself up, of giving yourself grace, using our support system enables us to do those things that we can't. Like if we can't figure out how to walk around that hole and we just keep doing it, well, maybe someone else has PhD in walking around the hole and getting around the obstacle. And maybe you have a lot of experience falling in it, and so you can benefit them with that somehow. It's getting too metaphorical. Yeah, but the point is that the things that we feel we're at a disadvantage because of become less significant when we are connected to a community or just a friend, even that can enable us to do things. Like I really don't enjoy doing anything by myself. The fact that I'm going to classes by myself is a pretty big deal. I don't like getting gas by myself. I don't like going to the grocery by myself. I don't, none of it. So having other people support me and encourage me goes a long way with me because I'm able to do a lot more than I tend to do by myself. Next, we have Mercury in Pisces, making a trine to Mars retrograding in Cancer just 3 days later on February 23rd. You can only pull someone else afloat if you're above water yourself. Similarly, don't expect more than what others are able to realistically offer. Negotiate and compromise with what you have available. Yeah, that really says it all. Don't expect more than what others can give, and don't offer more than what you can give. Don't be afraid to negotiate. That is like, I don't know why a lot of people are like scared of negotiating. Maybe I'm just very, again, Mercury. But negotiating is taking someone else's perspective into account. The goal of negotiating is not to overpower them or to, you know, put your offer above theirs, even though you are negotiating and advocating for yours. Part of that too is to see where they are at, to see what they have to give, what they don't have to give, you know, how far they'll go, how far they would never go, it's part of compromising. It's not just forcing your way over theirs or succumbing to their ways over yours and them, that's not negotiating. That's power dynamic. So compromise with what you have available. Say, this is what I can do. This is what I can't do. What can you do? What are you not able to do? And maybe there's some middle ground where there will be middle ground. You can work it out. I believe in you, and this is a good time for that. Next, Mercury again, just 2 days later, February 25th, is going to be conjunct Saturn in Pisces. Naming something gives it power and form. Renaming something has the power to change something's form. It is said in numerology, the study of numbers, that when you change your name, you change your destiny because there are numerical numbers associated with the letters, and the letters that spell your name therefore mean different things. And so you change your destiny by changing your name. And we can name ourselves, we can name other people, we can name an idea or just a concept, and that gives it power and it gives it a form. And so, if you name your car, it's no longer just the thing that you use to get from A to B. It is this thing you have a relationship with that might not be a living thing, but it is a relationship and it has a name and you talk about it like you're hanging out with it and you consider it. And sometimes people also have emotions that get attached to that too. It gives it power and it gives it form. And so that's a double-sided thing. Sometimes that can be unhelpful, and sometimes it can be helpful. And I will leave it up to you to decide when and where it is appropriate for yourself, but we'll just leave you with the idea that it can hurt and it can help. Next, 2 days later, February 27th, Mercury will make a sextile to Uranus and Taurus. And there are times where talking it out helps, and other times where it feeds into the issue. Try to find a healthy balance between sharing and oversharing. This is kind of similar to what I was just talking about. Sometimes it just feeds into it and makes it, all the words build up and they add on to each other, and other times it kind of deflates it and helps you simmer down. So, again, I'll leave it up to you to decide which and when and how, but that is what to keep an eye out for. Next, we're going to talk about our full moon and our new moon this month. The first, we're going to have the full moon in Leo on February 12th. And just as a general kind of note for this full moon. Your lived experience is a tool that can be used to heal, learn, and teach from. We're going to get into why in just a second, but just remember and keep in mind, if nothing else, that the experience you have already lived, immutable. You already have that experience. You can redefine it and change how you see it if that's helpful. It often is. And you can use that to heal and to learn and to teach from. It's a powerful, powerful thing, and no one can take it away from you because it already happened. They can't undo what already happened. You have that experience, it's part of you. And so redefining and taking control of that is very empowering because it's going to be there. Again, it happened. You can't take it away either. It happened already. Everything already happened already. I don't know how many times I'm going to wave my hands out. Like, it's just so obvious that your lived experiences are lived experiences in the most literal way possible. I don't know. I guess I'm going to rant. I'm going to go on a little soapbox for a second. I just think it's so crazy because there are people that really will deny your lived experience and will say, try and argue that, like, that's not actually what happened. But I guess that's why I feel so passionate about advocating for yourself and for your experience because no matter what they say, they can't take it away. They can deny it, they can argue with you or, shame you or belittle you or whatever, but they can't take it away. They you they can't undo it. It already happened. You're already there. You already experienced it. And yeah, we're not going to worry about nuances with memory or any of that right now. Just no one can take it away from you. That's what I want you to remember. So first, the moon on this full moon is going to be making a trine to Chiron and Aries, and that is where a lot of this comes from. You might have noticed the undertones in the lived experience and the healing and teaching from, but the lessons you embody and the struggles that come from them are a beacon of hope for those struggling in a similar way. So don't underestimate the kinship that you can have with people that share experience with you. It's so powerful. My hand is shaking. Yeah, people that know your struggle, and when you know someone else's struggle and you've both lived it, it really unites you and in a way that is hard to be described. There's actually a phrase, the blood of the covenant is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the waters of birth. And it's often misunderstood to mean that your birth family is like immutable, but it's saying the waters of birth, like your birth family, that's water compared to people that share experience with you that have shed blood with you, or you both have had. It's I think it was like a war battle kind of, you make a blood oath with someone or you shed blood together. Either way, you have similar experience, you go through the same stuff, you're going to relate to each other and you're going to be able to bond deeper than people that you just happen to be with. That's what that phrase means. Anyways, we're going to talk about the sun next. So the sun is going to be conjunct Mercury in Aquarius and also conjunct Ceres. So I have two different notes, but they really go hand in hand. The first is to try to take on new perspectives for old problems, and new perspectives will nurture you. So they really do go hand in hand. Old problems coming from Aquarius, being a Saturn ruled sign, being about the long term, being about troubles and problems, and the sun being about a new perspective. Yeah. Next, we have the sun in Aquarius and the moon in Leo making a T square with Uranus and Taurus. T square, if you're not familiar, just means that the sun and the moon are opposing each other, and then there's a planet that, the sun is making a square to, and another planet that the moon is making a square to, and then they're all connected to each other. And so there's three separate planets involved. In this case, the sun, the moon, and Juno, which is an asteroid. But a change in physical reality often starts with a mental change in priorities and commitments. What do you want to make room for in your life? Our commitments, for the most part, are a choice. I mean, there might be things that are so important that it's really not a choice. You have to commit to it. But our commitments with other people, with ourselves, there's a lot of room for negotiation and for autonomy. And so think about what you actually want to make room for in your life and start mentally preparing and visualizing like, this is something I could actually have. Like, I could have friends that treat me this way that I really enjoy, and I can have a job that treats me a certain way that I really enjoy, and I can treat other people in a way that I really want to and might not always feel able to. Just whatever, with peace and love, make room for what you want in your life. That's it for the full moon. We're going to move on to the new moon in Pisces, and that'll be it for February. So, just in general, for the new moon, it's a good time to take some rest. It can be a good time to lay yourself out and examine how you want to be put back together. It reminds me of, what's it called? Golden? No, Star-Crossed. The Casey Musgraves. It was like a visual album. Is that what it's called? Where it's like a bunch of music videos, but they're all connected. Anyways, there's one where she got in a car crash and then her body, there's body parts all over. They're like mannequin parts, and then they put them all back together and they put all the operating bed, and then Eugene Levy of all people is there, and he's the doctor, and he's like, okay, we gotta put it back together. Her heart's broke. And it shattered the rest of her body. So that's the visual I'm getting when I say to lay yourself out and examine how you want to be put back together, is because she had a broken heart. The album was about a divorce, and she had to put herself back together and examine how she wanted to be put back together and where she wanted to find her sense of fulfillment now that things have changed. So, this new moon in particular is a reminder that brighter days are coming. We're in the period where darkness is stable but not increasing. Now is the time to mentally prepare for literal brighter days, though no amount of preparation will make them come any faster. So that's why I say rest, because it's still going to take time. We're still in winter. Things are still going to move a little slow. They're going to speed up. And when they speed up, they're going to go. They're going to be fast. So prepare yourself for what you can. Visualize how you want things to, when you do have the energy for it, when you do have the interest, do you want to be using it for? And then when the time comes, you already know, and it'll just make sense. And then for now, you can kind of rest a little bit. There's two different aspects in the chart for the new moon that I wanted to talk about. The first is the sun and the moon making a square to Jupiter and Gemini. Sometimes life doesn't have room for all of our dreams to actualize. This doesn't mean that the dreams that don't fit are without purpose. What kind of space can you hold for the things you don't have time for yet? So, like I just mentioned, brighter days are coming. They might not be now. What is that David Lynch quote? R.I.P. One day the sadness will end, but today is not that day. That kind of mentality. It's just maybe you're still in it, but you know it will change. And so one time I was talking to my husband, and he was going through a bout of depression, and I remember asking him just like, what kind of things have you been into lately? Just a general, what have you been interested in? Any TV shows, games, random, reels on Instagram, whatever. Like, just what have you been into? And he's like, honestly, I've just been kind of depressed lately. And I was like, that's fair. And I said, if you could be interested in anything, if you could just force that, then what would it be? And he was like, oh, that's kind of fun. And was like, probably like sewing. And or crocheting. And I was like, that would be fun. Yeah, that's a good thing. So has he sewed or crocheted yet? No. Will he? Probably. He actually, now that I'm thinking about it, since the conversation, did set up the sewing machine in our room. And yesterday we made one of those little blankets where you cut the edge and then you tie them. I don't know what they're called, like a tie blanket or something. It was pretty cool though. So maybe he's getting there. Maybe he's still falling in the hole in the sense that he's not crocheting or sewing yet, but he is taking steps to move in that direction. And so that's what it's all about, is just visualizing it, making space for it. If I could force myself to be interested in something fun, even though I'm not interested in anything fun right now, what would it be? It doesn't have to be anything you can actually do right now. There's a certain room for those fantasies that we can make space for. Next, the sun and moon in Pisces, making a trine to Mars in Cancer. Vulnerability makes room for new strengths. Character is built through experience, not trauma. So again, based on this whole month of not beating ourselves up, but giving ourselves grace, I think I talked about that last month too because of Mars in Cancer. And I'm going to keep talking about it while it's in Mars is in Cancer because it's true and it's important. And for the last several years, my therapist has drilled this into my head. And I am having a Mars return right now. And it's fascinating that despite everything going on, my therapist has been like, wow, you've actually been really stable lately. And I'm like, I don't know. So, character is built through experience, not trauma. I think people think our struggles are what changed us and made us stronger when really it's just the experience of struggling, of things being hard, of having, sometimes forcing ourselves to do things that are not easy because we didn't have another choice. And it's not the trauma and the struggle and the hard part that builds the character and makes us who we are. We don't have to identify with the difficulty of it. We can identify with the experience of working hard and of accomplishing something and persevering through something rather than surviving it or suffering through it. So, yeah, that's why I wanted to talk a lot about our lived experiences and those being things that people can't take away from you is because that's your character. Like, no one else can decide how honest you are. They could call you a liar, they could call you dishonest, but if you haven't told any lies, then it doesn't matter. They can't do things for you. They can't, I don't know, they can't take it away. It's just so important. I keep stressing it. Yeah. And that experience is what makes you you. And we love that. So have a safe rest of your February. And I will see you guys next month.